All right, let's welcome a powerhouse panel diving into the heart of transformation. People. From insurance to venture capital and corporate strategy to leadership innovation, these leaders are redefining human capital, not just as an asset, but as the very foundation of resilient, future-ready systems. Christian Nock, CEO of Seguros GT, is known for building one of Central America's most admired workplaces through ethical leadership and high performance teams. Gabriel Winston, managing partner at Olivia, is shaping teams for the future with AI and innovation. Martin van Melders, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your names, guys, but they'll reintroduce themselves, so don't even worry about me. CEO and founder of London Consulting Group, brings 3 decades of experience helping companies integrate strategy, operations, and people. And Michael Nicholas, managing partner at Valor Capital Group, shares insights from running a top U.S. venture fund focused on Latin America. Get ready to explore how trust, culture, and people-centered leaderships are driving the future. Welcome, guys.
Well, hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be here at the Acatenango stage at the Volcano Summit. And we'll be addressing a theme that it's very passionate to me. I think it's very passionate for my co-panelists of how human capital is reshaping systems. Even though we practice in English, I tell you guys to feel free to talk in English or Spanish if that will help you discuss and amplify your ideas in a better way. So today we have Gabriel, Martin, and Michael, who are leaders who are making this part of their work day to day. Being a leader is an essential part of changing systems, and we want to know how human capital is one of the most important things that should be at the core of the strategy of any business. So we'll drive here today, and we'll start with a collective conversation in which I would like you two guys to focus and try to explain to us and try to converge in what does human capital really mean today? Why is it important to stop seeing it just as an asset and start seeing it as a part of the strategy of every business as a core, fundamental structure? So please, Gabriel, start with you.
So I think that first we have to align on what human capital is, right? When we talk about human capital, we tend to think that it's about employees, people that are working at our company, right? But I like to see it as a series of concentric circles, rings, in which we have the purpose in the center, and then we have, of course, the employees. We can explode that as well. And then the second ring is about probably those that are working for us, but for other companies, because this world is uberizing its labor market, right? The fractional roles. Then we might have freelancers or those that work for us, for our company in particular projects. And then we have other rings, like the clients and providers and even those employees that work for us but are not working anymore but might come back. So for me, human capital is about understanding that that's a network. And the sooner we understand that, we will be able to boost it to reach the purpose.
Thank you, Gabriel. I think you put a very interesting point of view that we're not talking about people just inside the company, but it's an entire ecosystem in which we serve other people within the company that are our stakeholders, even our stockholders, our main investment are people. So we have to address the needs of people all around. Martin, would you talk us a little bit about how your experience implementing these kinds of structures and how have you seen that human capital is important and how do you see human capital as part of the project?
Good morning to everybody. Martin is fine. It's Martijn in Dutch, but that's fine. If we think about human capital as an asset, as your question was, I think we're seeing it as a very limited resource. No? An asset we might think about skills or experience or knowledge, But I think really the people, all of us, are much more than that. So if we create the right framework in a company and the right culture so people can freely, but with accountability, interact, I think we make a lot more use from their creativity, their innovation spirit, their digital readiness, which every day new generations are more ready for it. And we get a lot more, let's say, from our human capital, We can interact in a very more enriched way.
Thank you, Martin. So now to you, Michael. You as an investor, how do you see the importance of a company and how do you measure the value of human capital when you're investing in a company?
So in venture capital, you have different stages, right? So you can start at the earliest stages where we have angel investors, and then you have Series A, Series B, and of course, as the company evolves, you have more structure around human resources and human development, skills, upskilling, these type of things. It becomes easier to measure, the results that you and the actions that you take with human resources. But at the earliest stages, which is the part that we focus on a lot, and you're really focusing on initially a founder, one or two founders. And so you're looking for things that aren't easily quantifiable necessarily, right? You're looking for things like resilience or adaptability. The ability, one of the things we look for is a skill that you wouldn't necessarily associate as being important in business, but actually we found it's a key indicator of success for entrepreneurs, and it's the ability to be a storyteller and to tell stories, to create narratives. And so if you think about it, a founder starts by themselves. They have to usually convince a co-founder to join them, so they're creating a story, a narrative, and then you have to convince investors, you have to convince clients. And so the ability to contextualize what you're doing and to make that easily accessible to people is very important. So it all starts with the founders and these intangible skills. And it's interesting, the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States, I believe this was in 2020, they made a regulatory change which was to measure human capital as an intangible asset. So they actually have to report it in your 10Qs and your 10Ks, which was a very interesting thing because if you go back into the 1970s, 80% of the value of a business on the S&P 500 was a physical asset. And if you fast forward to today, like 90 to 95% is intangible assets, so branding, different parts of IP, but especially human resources. So it's interesting that you can actually begin to measure that.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Very quick, but because I don't want to forget human capital department, because that's important. I think today we are in the sweet spot. Do you remember like 15 years ago when the IT areas were supporting areas? And now they became the star, one of the stars of any company. I think human capital departments are there now, thinking on how companies need to change in a fast-changing world. That's human capital, the one that can drive that business transformation, because companies don't transform themselves, but people do, right? So I think that's a good point too.
Great. I think that's a great reflection. And I think now about Jim Collins with his book, From Good to Great. And it's two main points that what made companies great were leadership and which people are sitting inside the bus, right? So I think this shows how important focusing on people, because even though the technology may be here at your hand, if you don't have a culture that it's ready to adapt that technology, you will always have a lot of difficulty to make the next step in your strategy. Also, I think, Michael, you can say when you have new investors and you want to integrate different cultures, it's humans that are the main key of what makes that culture to be more united or less united, right? So with that in mind, I would like to take a deeper dive now with your own expertise in what you do. So, Gabriel, with your work at Olivia, you focus on organizational change. From one's perspective of the person leading the change, because you do that every day, what are the most critical mindsets and shifts required for a leader to build a culture rooted from a long-term human development?
Nice question. How much time do I have to? Because
We have about
I-
3-4 minutes, okay?
I will try to be brief. Because I think the first thing for a leader, when we have to think about change and transformation, is about his or her internal transformation. And that's the key. Because any change nowadays will require leaders to see people and companies in a different way. So if I have to think on a mindset shift, just like you asked, I would say that the first one is forgetting that leaders are there and get paid to check what people are doing, to supervise every single detail. And we see that every day. It's about moving. Yesterday I gave a conference about, it's about stop the control and moving to empowerment and giving autonomy, right? So in order to trust, this is a double-way road. People will trust us, right? It's both ways. And trust means that we need to listen to people, to respect them, and to respect their ideas that are probably different from ours. It means that we need to be coherent between what we say and what we do. Because the moment we stop being consistent on how we act, we kill trust instantly. If I am, as a leader, erratic in my behavior, how could someone trust when they need me to behave in certain cases, in the most critical ones, in certain way? It means being vulnerable. Humans make mistakes. Leaders make mistakes. I mean, if we don't make mistakes, we are not human. We are superheroes. And that makes us unreachable. It moves people away. The second mindset shift, I think it's around long-term and short-term. We are too focused on the quarter of results, right? And we forget that change is a journey. It will take time. It's like the Kabler-Ross grief curve. You will have the change agents that will change immediately, but then you have those that probably have been in the company for the longest, that you need them to change, but they require time until they accept it. So if we are only measuring the short term, we are killing the long. You can measure the long by short term, so it doesn't work that way. And the last one is related to the leadership ego. And that also kills everything. Leaders are not the centerpieces of the story. Actually, I don't know if you watched Amsterdam, the TV series. It's about the hospital, takes place in a hospital, and the director is Mark Goodwin. Every time he sees one team member in the hallway, asks only one question. You know what it is? Anyone? How can I help? I love, and he doesn't say, where is the report? Okay? He's saying, how can I help? I love when I enter a company, an office, or any workplace, and I can't see who is the leader. I love leaders that don't give orders, but their team are the one that gives the orders to a leader.
Great, thanks. I think you put a very insightful way of how leaders really impact the culture and the people around the companies. So, Martin and Michael, do you have anything you would like to add to Gabriel's comments?
I think leadership today is to create the ambience that people can, well, as we said, with accountability, move freely around the company and really be able to be creative and help the company. In our methodology, we use a lot the part of the collaboration. So if you involve staff at all levels, the closest to the problem, the better. No, you will get the right answers. As you mentioned, leaders don't have the answers. The how can I help question, I love that one. Definitely is a good point, because at the end of the day, the people that are daily executing are the ones that know what they need. A little bit further on in the example you asked me, I will elaborate a little bit more on that point.
Thank you, Martin. Michael?
I really enjoyed Gabriel's comment and the point on trust, which I think is really interesting and really important. I remember when I was first starting to invest in Brazil, I met with an entrepreneur. I was just an angel investor at the time, so I was still learning things. And this was also a young entrepreneur, new entrepreneur. And we got together, and I was like, so tell me about your idea. And he's like, well, I can't really tell you about my idea, because he thought I was going to steal his idea. So I was like, well, it's going to be a little hard for me to invest in your business if you can't share the idea. But I think it's important. We've seen a change globally, and this is something that came out of Silicon Valley, which is, if you think of the open source movement, the foundations of like all the technology behind the internet, think of Linux, for instance, or even things like Wikipedia. These are open source projects where you have people contributing. But it goes beyond that. Like Silicon Valley developed an open source ethos, a trust in terms of sharing and helping people. And it creates a horizontal, a leveling type of effect, to your point earlier. And I think this is something that we've seen spreading around the world. And it's really trust-based, right? The idea that you can share your idea with somebody else. They're not going to take that idea, and that you're helping them, and a sharing of information instead of a proprietary view of things. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Michael. Well, I can repeat a little bit about the comment from Gabriel for trust, how important it is for people to know what they're heading to and why they are heading to different kinds of projects inside a company. So, Martin, in your expertise in implementing effective management solutions, we know systems are often designed to be efficient, right? But how can leaders and teams practically redesign operation systems and processes to work for the people and not the other way around?
Excellent question. I think the part of trust is important, and the collaboration. I thought about an example to just make the point. By coincidence, it's about an insurance company, but it's one in Mexico. We came a couple of years ago across a company, and through what's now also a very current term, customer journey, which should involve the customer, but also the users and our employees now. We were checking what the major pain points were in the different processes. And I thought about an example that most of us that drive a car can relate to. Most people should have a car insurance, I hope. But really, you have a car insurance to hope that nothing will happen. But in case of a crash, which I hope few of you have lived through, but probably a few, what's really the pain point? First, who's my insurance company? I can't remember. Where are the insurance papers? Whom should I call? And when I call, do they answer? And how long does it take? And when is the guy going to come to do the insurance? And in the meanwhile, I'm blocking the road, because here I believe there's a law you can't move the car when you're involved in an accident. So a lot of annoyance, And for the employee also, because he's treating with like angry clients or upset clients, So we analyzed through the whole system, and through collaboration and understanding people's pain points, we made the process and the systems work for the clients and for the employees. So we created an app that if you are in a car crash, you can immediately say, I'm in a car crash. If there's a medical issue involved, I need an ambulance. And it sends automatically the location. The nearest agent will pick it up. You can see when he picks it up, how far away he is, when he will arrive, and so on. So that's a very practical solution where you use processes, systems to help our clients and employees to actually be more happy at their job, and have more satisfaction of what they're doing. Same thing we developed in the insurance part for the health insurance. For instance, people that have to do weekly checkups. Every weekly checkup, they had to fill out the form, and the medic that were attending them had to send it to the insurance. So we automated all that different steps, so that really nobody had to do the paperwork, and everybody involved, it was easier to get the attention, So I think that if we got the right mindset, we involved everybody at the different levels in the organization that are really close to the daily problems, you will get to solutions where processes and systems really work for everybody involved. So I think Hopefully that answers
No,
your question.
I think that that's very coherent with your previous intervention of people know what they need for their work. You have to include them. So there's like a battle between, okay, technology is coming, AI is coming, maybe they will take my work, but it also the way that they will solve their own problem to be more efficient and more productive in their own work, right? So that's why trust is so important. So I don't know, Gabriel, Michael, would you like to add something in that process where Martin talked about?
I think the original question was about human-centered operations, right? And I've seen it many times. We haven't worked together, but sooner probably. That the focus is always, or in the majority of the initiatives, on the what. And we assume that since we give people tools and new ways of doing things and we train them, it will happen. But then we forgot that people don't change just because we ask them. Actually, it might be the opposite. So if we don't plan a change management initiative, at the same time we are planning the change we need to see, it will be really hard to make it happen. So, for example, I've seen many agile implementations. And it's okay, the ceremonies, the dashboards, whatever you want. But if people don't know how to collaborate, just like you mentioned before, if people don't know how to communicate between each other, if we don't have this client focus, then it won't work. So I think taking care of people is one of the main challenges.
Great, thanks, Gary. Michael?
I think in venture capital, we obviously put a lot of value on agility, which comes from trust and the open communication. There's a term we use, which is to pivot, which is actually a basketball term when you a way you move your feet on the court. But it means to move quickly. And in startups, pivots aren't something we actually like as venture capitalists because it means that the idea of the business has changed completely. So typically, we make an investment into people and into an idea, but we know that idea is going to change over time. It's extremely unusual to make an investment at a seed or an early stage business and then have that idea be the idea that takes the business to full success. Often it's the germ or the beginning of an idea, but many times, I mean, if you take Twitter, now X, before that it was audio, it was a sound application. They had like 3 or 4 months left of cash flow before running out of money, and they completely pivoted the business. But it meant that there was enough trust between the teams and the management to see that something wasn't working and to be able to agree on something that could work. Of course, it doesn't always work, but in that case, that's a happy ending story, right?
Great. And we'll stay with you, Michael, because we have talked a little bit how you start this change from a leader perspective, how you implement it. But you see the picture as an investor. How do you at Valor Capital measure and quantify the impact of a human-centric strategy or being a company that puts humans at the center of their strategy? How do you measure that when you're analyzing and investing in a company?
It's interesting, the value of humans, if you will, in the age of AI. Obviously, this is going to be a big discussion. But in venture capital, people are the asset, right? It's the most important thing. And at different stages of the business life cycle, the value of the business will be directly tied to the people involved in that business, right? So at the earliest stages, you're going to see it's going to be an individual, an entrepreneur, who may be a serial entrepreneur. If they're a serial entrepreneur, that means the valuation of the business may be higher because they have experience, right? They've either been successful in the past, and you get some type of credit for that, or they've failed, and in some places you get credit for that, and not in others. So the individuals are key, and then the ability to attract talent is so important. So we look at the first 20 hires basically shape the culture of a business, and who's going to hire the first 20 people? It starts with 1 or 2 people, right? And the quality of those initial hires is so important. And so in early stage investing, the quality of the team And their first hires are something that we look at as indicative of the potential of that business to scale and to attract talent. And we know that nowadays, especially if you've seen an AI, you probably saw with Meta, Mark Zuckerberg paying literally, tens to hundreds of millions of dollars to bring people from some of the other AI labs. It just emphasizes that with the tool sets, individuals can do a lot. There's been a lot of speculation about what will be the first company to become a unicorn with fewer than 5 people because of the leverage that you have with tools like AI. So even though there's a lot of concern and questions around AI, it's really a leverageable tool, and that just makes the human assets that much more important.
Great. Thank you for sharing that with us. Very insightful for me. And to see that, how important it is for you to see that the core leadership of a company. So, Gabriel, do you have any comments, or Martin, about Michael's intervention?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned AI now, no? And AI, at the end of the day, needs 3 ingredients, which is data, computing power, and algorithms. But maybe we're forgetting the most important part, and it's the recipe, right? And the only person or people that are going to get the recipe is the human capital. So the importance of having the right people on the job that really understand what do we want from AI, or what can it create for us, how can we get rid of the dull part of the work, automate it, and have people more thinking strategically, tactically. I think there will be a lot of more value in our jobs with AI well employed, than without it. But human capital is key. We'll make the recipe, right, to make it work.
It's so interesting because if you think about the history of computing and the different programming languages that we've used over the last 50 years, it's really about a human being able to articulate in a language that a computer can use, right? So you have an idea of what the result is, and then you have to describe it in assembly or Pascal or C++ or JavaScript. And what's changed with the large language models now is that the new programming language is whatever language you speak, English, Spanish, Portuguese, right? But what's important is the ability to describe the outcome. And I had a friend say that, all of a sudden, the engineers don't have the advantage anymore. They had the advantage when what you had to do was describe the outcome in a programming language. But now the humanities people, the people who study, general, anthropology, linguistics, stuff, if they can describe, or even literature, if they can describe the outcome more accurately now because of the new tools, then they have an equal advantage as, programmers had for a long time.
No, I just like what Michael said about those 21st employees, because they shape the culture of the organization, right? Everything is built on top of those. You have the number 20. But I don't know how much the founders of a startup realized or know how important those first 20 employees are, because usually they are focused on the technical part, AI, data science, wherever, but forget about the cultural fit, and that might kill the entire thing before it burns.
Okay, great, thanks. And I think Michael started to talk about a theme that is so important today, that it's AI. So AI is coming to give us a lot of options of automation to be more efficient, and that has an impact on the culture of any company in the process and what people think of AI. So I wanted to, this last round of question, how do you see AI implementing in the companies, and how can we use AI in this form that also helps for the culture and humans and people inside the company to be better and make it always about the people and not about the new technology that is coming, either is AI or business intelligence or any other new technology that will come in the future?
Okay. I would like to go a few steps back, no? In any implementation of systems, the human capital sometimes is forgotten, and it's the most important part. At least in our business, we come up to so many companies that have, for instance, a CRM or an ERP system, and when we see how much they use it, it might be 20%. So when we talk for the ingredients of AI, as we just mentioned, no, the first one is data. So we were with a big transport logistics company, I don't know, a few hundred trucks. And simply in the first interview, we asked, okay, great. Do you have GPS controls on your trucks? Yeah, sure we have, on all the trucks. Okay, what do you use them for? For when there's an accident. So if we have data in the company that we don't use to manage, to get like efficiency out of it, or at least a better route or better customer service, measure the times, measure the different things, I think we failed in implementation of this system, where the people see why should we have this system and how can it really help us, no? Which was a little bit a question. Like it isn't about control, it is about making life easier. So if we don't tackle the basics, which in a lot of companies we still got a lot of challenges to tackle the basics, no? Which is related to data. Which data do I have? Can I trust them? Is my ERP really on time or online and on real time? And the data I have there, can I trust that data? And a lot of times that's not the case. So how can you build AI in your company to do something supposedly better if you don't have the basics right? No?
So, yeah, AI is interesting, right? Because it's something in my career over the last 25 years, it happened so quickly, right? That's something that just emerged in the last 5, 7, 8 years. And there's obviously a big hype cycle around it. I think over 50% of new venture capital dollars that were invested in the first half of 2025 went into AI-related companies. And we're certainly going to go through the hype cycle and the trough of disillusionment and the whole technology adoption curve that we're used to. But it's also an amazing technology, right? And I think when it comes back to human capital, just the upskilling, the sort of augmentation it gives you. I remember, when I'm on my first job, my boss would ask me something, and I was like, I of course couldn't tell him to Google it. I would go Google it for him, and he was like, "Wow, how did you know that?" And it's like, this is sort of crazy. It's sort of very simple. Just go. AI has that ability to teach us things. It's like I wanted to learn a programming language which I wasn't familiar with, and I told it that I knew how to program in Python and in JavaScript, but I didn't know C++. And it was able to give me that information, and I was able to learn it quickly. So the upskilling aspect of it is I think amazing. I think there's going to be challenges for a lot of jobs where things are very routine, and there's just like copy-paste type of things, and it's going to figure out how, with the displacement that comes with AI. But it's also an amazing technology, and I think it's going to create opportunities for people's skilling and things like that.
I think that we have been framing the entire thing in the wrong way. We tend to think that AI will replace tasks, right? But in the end, if we stop thinking about the transformation as like with the AI as the driver, and we stop thinking on efficiency as the goal, and we think on amplifying human capital, then the entire thing changes. And every single company, at least big companies, implementing AI now. And after working on transformation for almost 15 years, you can say you want to be more innovative or more agile or more digital or more sustainable or more inclusive, but those are the last name for the transformations. There are two reasons. You transform yourself because of a crisis or because of a vision. There's nothing in between, except for one, ignorance. You change because others are changing. You don't know why, you just simply change. And that's a problem, because we don't have a real purpose to make it happen. So you will never arrive to anything, right? So if we change the narrative, if we stop putting the focus on AI, it might impact our culture in a very deep way. If we communicate it with transparency, explaining people that we don't measure them because of the amount of tasks they perform, but because of the value they create, it changes everything. And I think that's the point.
Right, Gabriel. I agree totally with you. I think that, well, I started using AI myself a lot over the last months, and I've been working harder now, but my steps are being are longer. So that's what I think, that you can see this as a way of making your company efficient or making your people more productive. And I think that AI is just one of the tools that we can give our people, our human capital, to be more productive and to try to excel in their positions. Because there's a lot of other variables that affect the company and its productivity, and it has to be with how is the well-being of our people. And AI can help us create a better well-being for our people, to be less burnout, because we all have times of burnout with all the tasks that we have to do. So we still have some minutes, and we would like to ask the audience if there's any questions you would like to ask Gabriel, Martin, and Michael. Now's the chance. So, anybody? Okay, please go ahead.
This is the first time that we can ask questions, so I wanted to take the chance, and thank you. What are the new competences that managers today, at my age, I'm 34, what are the new competences that I have to achieve or develop now that human capital is changing with AI, no? Like, I think that in my time, I've been hearing about productivity and, like strategy and whatever. And now I think that I don't have to know more because AI is going to know it, right? So what do I have to focus now? Because now I think that in my point before, it was about knowledge, and now it's not about knowledge anymore, right? It's about the way. So what do you think about this?
Please, go ahead.
You want to answer?
Nope.
That's the most difficult one. If I were you, I would ask any AI to see what happens. No, just kidding. I would say, I think it was Alvin Toffler, the one that said the literal of the 21st century are the ones that are not going to be able to unlearn, learn, and relearn. I think that's number one. And it's not about knowledge, it's about soft skills. It's not about getting new stuff in your brain because you read and get, and that's important, but the knowledge is there. And all the time and everywhere and instantly, and there's nothing you cannot know for 1 second. I mean, so it's about relationships from my perspective, right? It's about communicating, about inspiring, about being as human as possible. I think those are my 2 cents.
Thanks.
Maybe adding to that, effectively, AI should help that we humanize the job more. No, we've got more room for creativity. We got more room for emotional intelligence, which are things like related to what you mentioned. And if it takes out the dull part of the work, well, we can relate more to that. So I think that adds up.
Thank you. Michael?
I think I agree with Gabriel. The ability to learn is clearly going to be one of the most important things. I think the rate of change is just increasing. So the interest in the ability to use tools to figure out how change is happening and the continuous learning, I think, is probably the single most important thing. I can't remember the other point.
That's okay. Well, I think also that in the past, we used to focus on how to get that knowledge about information. How can we know more things to make better decisions? But right now, I think the game is called reskilling. How can you reskill your company and yourself in the fastest way? Because the information is there, but the information is not the decision that you have to make. And decision is not the same for every company, because every company has a different culture, a different strategy, and you have to keep differentiating yourself from your competitors. So everybody will have access to the same tools of AI. What will make your company different? And I think, as a closing remark, because we're running out of time, they already put the panel up. So, one more?
There was another question there, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, Who was the last question? Okay. Go ahead. Could you take the microphone to her, please?
While they're getting there, I remember my last point. It's
Okay.
generalists
Oh.
are the people that are going to be successful in
Yeah.
in this new world, and not specialists,
specialists, yeah.
necessarily. The ability to make connections across broad, topics is going to be really key.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. The question is particularly for you, Michael. I don't know if I'm butchering some of the things that you said, but I think I understood that you said that human capital was an intangible or intangible asset before, and that's starting to shift. So I'm curious if there are any tools or companies that we can look at in terms of how they're measuring the value of their human capital when it's time to exit or to sell the company.
That's a really good point, and I think it applies especially more in private equity, I would say, than the earlier stage venture capital. But I've seen some KPIs, some key performance indicators that measure specifically around upskilling and the productivity of individuals, and that this is, referring back to the SEC ruling specifically, they now measure things like employee retention, churn, which is tied to culture, to employee satisfaction, to the ability, the feeling of purpose, especially with the younger generation, and stuff like that. Sorry? People analytics, yep.
Anything you would? No, please, you go ahead. Do you have any thoughts for closing your interventions, Gabriel?
I haven't thought about them, but we are in a world that is shifting faster and faster, and we don't know where we are going. But I'm sure the future won't be like the present. The question is, how open are we as leaders to understand which are the possibilities? Because I'm sure the future won't be like today. So we need to be ready, because we won't have time to react. So as professionals, we have everything in front of us to make it happen. Just don't get delayed, because the wave is on the horizon now, but it will get closer and closer. So we won't have time to react when the wave is about to come over.
Thanks, Gabriel. Martin?
Yeah, talking about AI, also a lot of people are like, have a sense of fear that they might lose their job, no? And sure, some jobs will be replaced by AI, mostly the repetitive, maybe the boring jobs. So reskilling, learning, generalist was one of the words we mentioned. It will definitely be a thing of the future, but human capital will always be key, no? We make the recipe, so.
Michael?
I think we're going to see a revaluation of like things that are human. I think if you remember like the player piano that came up like 100 years ago, it can play any piece fairly perfectly, but it always plays it the same way, exactly the same way. There's no nuances, there's no feeling. You're not bringing anything to that piece, something that happened to you in the last week. So I think we're going to value, as AI and robotics and things take the play, the role of the human with all their imperfections. I saw there was like a soccer game with robots, and I was like, God, that's got to be the most boring thing in the world. Because you want to see like Maradona screw up, have a bad day, a good day, and people excel. And so I'm very positive on the human still.
Okay. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. I hope you had a lot of ideas of how we implement the human-centric culture in your companies. I think humans will be here, as you said, Michael, not only because we need to work, but if we need to feed some clients' needs are going to be human needs. And that part is an essential part of being, of our culture, being focused on humans. What do they need? What do we need to produce as a service, as a product? And that's part of having a human-centric culture and strategy. So thank you, everybody. I hope you keep enjoying the Volcano Summit.